Hi there, Sandra here from the Schwoven's Nest. Thanks for joining me today. It's another episode of Timber Tuesday where all my projects consist of wood. Let's get started. I'm still working on a huge pile of spindles from a couple of beds that I cut down last summer, and I decided to grab these two pieces. One is a little bit taller than the other, but they both sort of have the same shape. I'm giving them a good cleaning with some crud cutter. They've been sitting in my garage, and I wanted to just dull them up a little bit as well. I promised myself this year that I would use a lot of different colors other than white. This is one of my favorite gray colors. It's Parisian Gray by Home Decor Folk Art, and it is a chalk paint. I'm going to give this one really good coat, and I'm going to do the same on the other spindle. Once the spindles were dry, I took some gray chalk paint and I added some baking soda to it. Not a lot, but just enough to give me a little bit of a grainy texture. And I'm going to give each of them a coat of this too. Once that paint was dry, I'm taking some Home Decor wax, which is clear wax. And the reason I bought clear wax is then I could add any color I wanted. So I'm just dipping this really fat chippy brush into the clear wax and then just a little tiny bit into the Parisian gray. I'm just brushing it on sort of like in a dry brushing motion. Then I'm going to take a paper towel and just dab some of it off like you see me doing here. And it's just going to give this sort of an aged, textured look, a little bit like stone, a little bit like concrete. But I just thought it was a really neat effect and I really liked it. When I'm at the thrift stores, I'm always on the lookout for birds. Ceramic, stone, wood, I really don't care. But I've really not been able to find what I'm looking for. So when I was at one of my dollar stores and I saw these little foam chickadees, I thought, ooh, I should grab these because I might be able to do something with them. I used my utility knife to cut a slice off the bottom so they would sit nice and flat. One of them ended up kind of bending down a little bit, and one was still sitting upright, and I thought that was kind of fun. I always put my styrofoam pieces on a bamboo skewer so it's easier to hang on to when I'm painting. These guys are going to get one coat of Parisian gray chalk paint just as a base coat. Now I'm going to use the same Parisian gray chalk paint, but this time instead of adding baking soda, I'm going to be adding some of the Dollar Tree sand. I added about a teaspoon of the sand into the paint and mixed it up with a plastic spoon. With this type of paint and technique, you don't brush it on. You have to kind of just pounce it onto your decor piece because otherwise you're just going to end up moving the sand all over the place and it's not going to stick. So you can see here that I'm just picking some up with my brush and then dabbing it on. Now this ends up being a lot of paint on these and they do drip a little bit. So every once in a while, I just took a look at it, and if there were any big drips coming down from the bottom, I just kind of wiped them away. This took a long time to dry, and I did let it set overnight. The next day, I made up some Parisian gray and some baking soda again. And this time I'm just using this brush that I love for stippling and for putting things on. And I just wanted to finish off these birds just to give them even a little bit more texture and kind of smooth them out a little bit. There were a couple of spots where there wasn't any sand at all. So just using the baking soda paint kind of blended it all in together. The birds are starting to look really great, but I did want to give them a little bit of extra color just so they would be a little bit more blended in with the little spindles. So I'm just taking the same brush and using some white chalk paint, just dabbing it off the brush that I have there. And it's going to just hit all of the raised edges on the birds and give them some really nice highlights. I didn't want to use any permanent glue to attach these birds to the spindles because you never know down the road I might want to do something different with the spindles, Or if I put these on Facebook Marketplace and they don't sell, I might just have to change it up. So what I decided to do is just put a big nail in right in the center, and you can see that I'm just bending it a little bit to make the hole a little bit bigger. I'm going to cut the pointed end of the skewer down so it fits into the nail hole and the other end will fit inside the bird. Glue them together with some tacky glue and then just a couple of dabs of hot glue on the spindle to make sure that it doesn't go anywhere. I think these turned out really beautiful. I'd like to give a big thank you to all of my current subscribers. I really appreciate you guys. You helped me get to my 2021 goal of 30,000 subscribers, and I'm so excited. This year I have a new goal, and if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, I would love it if you could help me out by hitting that red button. For this project, I'm going to be using different sizes of the tumbling tower blocks to create a little crate. I'm taking 4 of the medium-sized ones and I'm going to be gluing them together in a row. I'm just going to use hot glue because on raw wood, the hot glue works really well. I'm going to do 2 rows for now, so I'm working on the first set of 4 and then I'll work on the second set of 4. I'm working on the bottom of the crate, so now I'm going to be taking 2 of the tumbling tower blocks from the Dollar Tree, which are the smaller sizes, and putting 2 together, and I believe I did at least 8 of them. I'm going to be taking the sets of 2 and using my Weld Bond glue, I'm going to be gluing them onto the one set of 4. This is going to start creating the base of the crate. So I'm just going to be pushing them together really well and then setting it aside to dry. I'm going to be using a couple of these tin houses that I got from Dollarama. They have been in my stash for a couple of years now, and I just figured it is time to get these out of the closet. Now, if you don't have these, it doesn't matter. You could use some of the wood houses that you can get at the Dollar Tree. If you wanted to add a little chimney to the top, you could, but because I had these in my closet, I wanted to get rid of them. So I'm just giving them a couple of good coats of my DIY white chalk paint. I finished off the other side of the base by just gluing it again with some of the wood glue. But because none of these blocks are all the same size, I needed to secure it a little bit better. So I'm just using regular size popsicle sticks and I'm hot gluing them right across from one end to the other. And that will just ensure that nothing falls apart. I decided to stain the bottom of the crate, and the way I'm doing this is using some burnt umber acrylic paint, and I'm dipping my brush in some water first and then into the burnt umber, just so I get more of a stain effect rather than a solid color. It still gets pretty brown, but you can still see some of the wood grain through, which is what I was going for. Now that the base is done, it's time to work on the sides. I took the medium tumbling tower blocks again and created 2 more strips of 4. Now I'm taking the medium ones again and gluing them, sort of making a picket fence kind of look or just some slats in between. And I'm going to do my best just to eyeball the spacing in between. Again, I decided just to use hot glue for these. I'm painting these side sections white just with my DIY chalk paint, and it covers it really well, so I end up just needing to do one coat. This time I'm using the Weld Bond glue, Hot glue will not attach to the stained surface. It will, but it'll pop off very easily. So I'd rather just get a permanent hold with the Weld Bond glue. I'm just going to use a popsicle stick just to spread it out a little bit so it's all over the surface of the tumbling tower blocks, and then press it in place and let it set for a good 15 minutes. Using my miter shears, I'm cutting a piece of dowel, which will be the handle for the crate. Now, with the miter shears, you definitely cannot go through something this hard and this thick all together. So what I'm doing is just squeezing as hard as I can and then pulling it off and spinning it around and squeezing again. And eventually, the more I do this, I can get all the way around and all the way through my dowel. Now you could definitely use a saw and a miter box for this. It would probably be a much smoother cut, but for me, it was good enough. So I lost some footage, or I probably forgot to turn my camera on when I was assembling this little crate. So the little box went inside the metal houses. If you're using a Dollar Tree house, you could probably just do it on the outside because it's wood. Because these are metal, it was a little trickier. So I did have the box go inside the houses. I glued them with my Weld Bond glue and a little bit of hot glue, and I did have to clamp them and set them aside and let them dry. Now I'm just gluing in the dowel and letting that dry up as well. Using the same burnt umber with a little bit of water, I stained the dowel the same as the bottom of the crate. To make the roof look a little bit more like a roof, I took some of these large garden stakes that I have and I cut them down so they would hang over the edge of the house just a little wee bit. And then I just used my miter shears to cut them. I used hot glue and Weld Bond glue to hold them in place. I love the end result of this little crate, but I have to be honest, there are so many steps and so many details involved in it that I probably wouldn't do this one again. I used the same burnt umber and water stain mixture for on top of these little wood pieces, and you can see that a while ago I had already painted the chimney in the brown color as well. So since the bottom of the crate has the brown stain on it, I wanted to incorporate that into the house portion as well. So I'm just again taking the burnt umber with a little bit of water and I'm just drawing a line across. It's going to look like a little piece of wood at the bottom, and I did it around the sides as well. For the final details, I printed off a door and a couple of windows on tissue paper, and I'm using Mod Podge to apply it. And I'll just go ahead and use the Mod Podge to smooth out the tissue paper. And I think this is probably my favorite part of this whole project. I really loved these doors and windows. I actually got these off of Cricut Design Space, but I just modified some of the colors, and I will have these available as a free printable down in my description box where you will find a link to my website. You'll have to let me know what you think about this crate and how long it took me to create it and show you how I created it. I think it did turn out sweet in the end. My last project for you is a wood round sign. I found someone locally in town who cuts out these wood rounds in assorted sizes, and they're really not that expensive either. So I decided to make a beautiful wood round sign for my subscriber, Kimberly, who sent me four, count them, four huge boxes of craft supplies because she was not going to be crafting anymore. So, Kimberly, this one is for you. I hope you love it. I hope you enjoy it. And again, thank you so much for your generosity. As you can see, I taped off a huge section in the center, which is going to be painted white. It's going to need 2 coats of my DIY chalk paint. I also made sure that I got the edges of where the white is. That is just going to make the sign look more finished and more professional. Kimberly shared with me that her favorite color is green, so I just love this eucalyptus color from Martha Stewart Vintage Chalk Paints. So I decided to make an extra stripe on it and use this green. Now I am just going to freehand up until the white simply because I was too impatient to let the white dry and I didn't want to put any tape on top of the white because I didn't want it to peel off. So I am just going to take a smaller brush in a minute and freehand the line all the way across. This is a stencil set that Kimberly also sent to me, so I'm very happy to be using some of her supplies for her own project. This is a script stencil set and it has uppercase and lowercase, and I'm going to be using that to spell out the word welcome. I have been wanting a stencil set that is script letters for a really long time. I've been wanting to do it on my Cricut Joy, but creating stencils on the Cricut Design Space is really time consuming. So I was super excited when I found these in the box of supplies. Just about jumped out of my skin. Instead of using paint to stencil this on, I wanted it to be really nice and crisp. So I'm using a pencil to outline the letters, and then I'm going to use my Sharpie oil-based paint pen to fill in the letters. And this just gives a beautiful, deep, rich black look. This is my first time using the Sharpie oil-based paint pens. They are very similar to the Craft Smart paint pens that I normally use. The tips on the Sharpies, though, are a little bit different. This is a medium round tip. The ones that I normally use are either the chisel tip or the fine tip. So I was really excited to try this type of tip. I do like it much better for tracing the outline of the letters. It gives you a much crisper line. And the only thing is you takes a little bit longer for you to fill it in because the tip isn't as wide as the other one. So in future, I might end up using a combination of both my paint pens. Letter stencils always have a bit of a cutout, especially on letters like the E and the L when there's a circle in the center, because the cutout part has to still have that circle in the center attached to the stencil. I decided to go ahead and fill that all in. And the other thing I did was join all of the letters together just by taking the end of the E and dragging it into the L. Another thing that I really like to do is draw a little bit of a shadow outline on one side of the letters. I always tend to go on the left side of the letters. So what I'm doing here is just drawing a line from the bottom of the W and then looping it around on the one side. I'm going to do the same with the E. I'll just start at the top and just go around the left-hand side and just bring it all the way down. Whenever I make my signs with florals on the front, I always get so ahead of myself. And this time I finally remembered to add the hanger first. Otherwise, I end up squishing the flowers. So I'm just taking a piece of this jute rope that I got from the Dollar Tree and my staple gun, and I'm just giving it a few staples on one side. Then I'll cut it to length and do the same on the other side. Just the other day, I was watching Sammy over at Unicorn Dust Designs, and she is the queen of wood rounds, in my eyes at least. So she had been stapling all of her greens onto her signs, and I thought, what a fabulous idea, especially if it's going to be hung on a front door, possibly out in the elements, and for sure up here in Ontario, Canada. We are in snowbound country right now and it's very windy. So I thought, hey, I've got my staple gun out. I'm going to do the same thing. So these are just some eucalyptus little picks that I have. They were individual stems stems, but I just made them into my own little picks, and now I'm going to arrange them in a way that I like. I'm going to add some of the white hydrangea flowers that you can see on the table here next to me. I'm also going to add a few little greenery sprigs to kind of give it a little bit more texture. And finally, I'm going to use somewhat of a burlap bow. It's not really burlap. I just got it on sale at Michael's. It had some gold trim. I took off the trim and created a bow with a little bit of white grosgrain ribbon as well. And I think this turned out really pretty. I hope you enjoyed my Timber Tuesday projects today and got inspired to create something with wood. If you did, I would love for you to give me a thumbs up. That helps me get noticed a little bit more on YouTube and helps my channel grow. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit that red subscribe button if you haven't already. And make sure you click that bell so you don't miss out on any of my future videos. Bye for now.